Started.
Okay. Hello,
Thank you.
everyone. Yeah, go ahead, Rohit. Sorry.
No problem. Yeah, thank you everyone for attending this webinar of ours. So I'm Rohit from Product Marketing, and Sean, who you heard talk earlier, is our sales engineer. And we are going to, in this webinar, explore how you as a business using CloudConnexa can share your private applications securely among multiple overlay networks of your own organization, as well as externally to any of your business partners or vendors, etc. So we are mainly going to cover two of our features today. One of them, we call it multi-WPC, which stands for multiple WPCs, which is wide area private clouds. And Sean will give you an overview of the product to start with, so that all these terms which I'm talking about now will become familiar to you. And then we will also talk about another feature called App Hub, which is how we facilitate the sharing of applications. So with that, can we move to the agenda, Sean?
Yeah, here we go.
Thank you. So Sean will introduce CloudConnexa, mainly talk about some of the concepts, some of the terms involved in this cloud delivered service of ours. Then we will talk about why you may want to have more than one overlay private network. See some of the use cases or reasons that talks about that. And then we will show how you can share applications between multiple of your own private networks, and then how you can share applications externally. And with each of these sections, after some introduction and explanation about the use cases, Sean is going to go and show you a demo about how that aspect of the feature functions. And if you have any questions during this session, you can ask using the Q&A functionality of Zoom here. And as soon as it's answered, we'll try and answer some of these questions live, or we'll answer it via chat, and it will then go on to the answer tab of Q&A. So once your question is answered, look at the answers tab to find the answer, and there will be a thread if there are multiple answers for that same question. So with that, let me hand it over to Sean to give you a brief introduction about CloudConnexa.
Yeah, thank you, Rohit. And hello, everyone. Happy Monday. So without any further ado, we're going to start talking about CloudConnexa. As Rohit mentioned, there's going to be an overview of what the product is for people that they're not familiar with the CloudConnexa. So what is CloudConnexa? You can think of CloudConnexa as a cloud delivered service that creates a virtual private overlay network that you can use to connect devices and resources together securely all over the world. Now, these resources and devices can be users, can be applications in your private networks, or even IoT devices. We have about 30 plus worldwide locations or point of presence from which you can connect to CloudConnexa and use the service. We also have integrated security features into the service, so that's provide advanced security functions, as well as advanced routing and secure connectivity functions. I'm going to explain a little bit about these later on. Now, These 30 plus locations or point of presence are called regions in CloudConnexa. And you can think of them as data centers where we host our kernel optimized high performance servers, basically. These regions interconnect to each other using a full mesh topology, which with the full mesh topology connectivity ensures that there is always a direct connectivity between our regions, which makes the connectivity performance very high because you reduce the latency, and also because this mesh connectivity, there are always redundant routers present to the number of other regions. So even if one of or two connections go down, there is always another route available to reach the same destination. So it works as a redundancy also. Now, let me move to the next slide. Here we go. So CloudConnexa service is multi-tenant. What that means is that the regions, the core network we talked about that connects all these regions and all other elements of this platform are shared with all customers, and they are virtually isolated. So we don't spin up a dedicated service for each customer. Instead, we have from the get-go use multi-tenant architecture, which is cost effective, and we can pass those savings to our clients. So the other important aspects of being multi-tenant is that as soon as you sign up for the service, the virtual overlay network, which we call it a wide area private network, wide area private cloud, or WPC, is created immediately. I got confused for a second here. So when you sign up, and you're going to see in a minute how we create another WPC. That's the process for even if you want to create the first WPC. So it's going to be pretty quick. When you sign up, you'll be asked to provide a cloud ID. So the cloud ID is a unique identifier that is used to identify the WPC, and that will be set up for you. Now, your cloud ID will be whatever you provide, as long as it is unique in our system. Basically, the format is going to be your wpc.openvpn.com. So this is how you'll be access your admin user interface and portal. And also, in a way, you can get configuration files to your clients for connecting. That we'll cover that in a little bit later. Now, for this webinar, you can simply think about your CloudConnexa WPC, which again is identified as the cloud ID, as a kind of a virtual distributed router and a powerful next generation firewall, which are out there in the cloud and is meant only for your use and the 30 plus worldwide regions as your virtual ports of this router. Now, how do we connect users, servers, networks to these ports? Again, these ports are regions of this virtual distributed router. Again, it is your WPC. We use OpenVPN protocol to create secure encrypted tunnels over the internet to those regions. Think of it as a virtual super long Ethernet cable that connects your devices to the ports of your cloud router. That is, again, your WPC. So what is needed to create those tunnels? We need to use a client app on the devices that needs to set up the tunnel. So the official client is OpenVPN Connect. It's available for Windows, Mac OS, iOS, and Android. And for Linux, we recommend using our open source OpenVPN 3 client, which also has support for data channel offload, or DCO, which is a technology that improves data throughput performance. You can also use OpenVPN protocol compatible routers like Teltonica and firmware like OpenWRT. Now, we call the same client application sometimes a client and sometimes a connector. And you may be wondering why. We use the term connector to distinguish basically the connection from a typical on-demand client connection, like a remote user. Now, even though it is the same client app, the context in which it is set up in the administration portal and the configuration profile allows the connector to create an unattended connection and is used to provide access to applications, which are hosted on the servers that it's it runs on the network connected to the WPC. So to summarize, connectors make networks and applications part of the WPC, and clients are to connect to the WPC to basically use the services available via the connector. Now, you're going to see in a minute during the demo that I'm going to use a client app to connect to WPC as a user. Now, user devices, user groups, and all other regular relatable terms, I'm not really going to cover here. You're going to see, I mentioned a couple of them during the demo. You're going to see creating a user group users, but let's talk about hosts, networks, and applications. Now, these resources or host networks and applications are representation of an application server, a private network, and any TCP/IP services in the CloudConnexa. So an application server on which the connector is installed with the intention of providing access to application that are being served is configured as a host in CloudConnexa. So whereas a private network which provides access to the WPC for the devices on a network and also provide access to others for applications that are hosted on the network or sites is represented as a network entity in CloudConnexa. Now, applications are services that are identified by a domain name that are made accessible to the WPC. For example, this host is making two services accessible to the WPC. One is FTP, and the other, which is named ftp.test.local, and the other one is being RDP, that it is basically configured as an application within the CloudConnexa. And these applications can be further guarded by providing access to only specific protocols and ports, and can later be used in access control. Again, this part of it, you're kind of see in the third demo that we're going to do. We're going to create an application and create access policy for that application. So in short, what makes CloudConnexa different? Well, the available with 3 free connections, with focus on ease to use. So you can sign up right now for CloudConnexa full future. We're not even going to ask for the credit card. You get 3 connections. Now, using application names for routing, instead of using IP routes and IP addresses and everything else, you can use the application names for routing. That's going to add another layer of security. Vertically integrated security features. We have plenty of security features within the products, such as IDS and IPS, domain filtering, and so on. Device identity verification, you're going to see that in a second. And then the last thing I'm going to mention here is price based on the number of simultaneous connections needed. You can create 20 users and 20 devices. But if you sign up for 3 free connections, as long as 3 of them connect simultaneously, you're good to go. If you sign up for 10 connections, again, you can have 50 users and 50 devices, but as long as 10 of them connect at the same time, you're good to go. You don't need to pay per users or per devices. Again, it's just per connections. So that was a quick introduction to CloudConnexa. I know I went very quick, but I just want to give you an overview of what the product is. And now I'm going to pass it back to Rohit so we can talk about WPCs and multiple WPCs.
Yeah, so thanks, Sean. So basically the question is, okay, I've signed up for the service. As soon as I signed up, as Sean said, you provide a cloud ID and you get a WPC. Why would I need more than one WPC? So there can be multiple reasons for needing more than one WPC in the same organization or in the same account. And some of them I have illustrated here. One is, let's say your company is a large one. There are multiple divisions. These divisions do not basically operate almost like a standalone company. They do not really interact with each other's applications, and they manage their own budgets. They want total control of their budget and applications. So then you can just create one WPC for each of those divisions. They are now completely isolated. Their number of connections and how you pay for them can be different. And so here we are looking at isolating the private networks based on your organization hierarchy or how your company operates. Then the second reason could be that you might decide to isolate or segment your network based on the use cases or the purpose for creating this WPC. For example, you might want to connect your branch offices to your headquarters, or your headquarters to the AWS VPC, like a hybrid network or multi-cloud network. So for site-to-site private networking, you can dedicate one WPC for it. Then you can create one WPC for remote access. That's where all your users get authenticated and get access to applications. And then you might want to isolate your IoT network from these other two and dedicate one WPC just for IoT networking. Right. Another example I've given is one WPC is for general remote access, and then you create another WPC just for privileged access, or the IT super users or admins who can manage computers or manage application servers, etc. Then the third reason could be because you want to set different global configurations for a WPC. For one example, let's say one of your remote users WPC needs to be authenticated with Okta, and another of your user base is just transitioning from the DevOps team uses, instead of Okta, they use their own Keycloak or some other authentication system. So you can have, and since authentication is a global setting, you can have one WPC doing authentication with Okta, another one with Keycloak. Or there are some other global security controls that you want to separate and customize each WPC based on different configuration settings. So you can have multiple WPCs for that. And lastly, it's just to reduce the complexity of management. So if you go the zero trust route and you have access control policies for every role or for every department, or based on identity, then you might end up having a lot of access controls, and it might be a bit of a management headache trying to keep all of them updated and knowing what is what. So at that time, you can again separate the WPCs for each use, for each department, whatever, and keep those access controls, the number of access controls, segregated like that. And of course, you can think of many more reasons now that I've given a few examples. So what does this multiple WPC mean? So I've given an illustration here. So in the center, if you think of your center as being CloudConnexa, and you see on the right that all these three WPCs belong to just one owner account, owen@company.com. So you can think of segmenting all the networks that you have administrative control on, and you are now segmenting them into three parts. Here it's based on the use case. So you have created one WPC in the middle for your site-to-site networking. one WPC in the bottom for your IoT, and the top one is for your point to site or remote access. So we have the flexibility for an owner to, again, on demand, create additional WPCs as they desire. And using the administration portal, you can easily switch between the WPCs so that you can configure them almost in a seamless fashion. So I think next is the demo, right, Sean? So Sean is going to show you here that he's going to create another WPC. So there's one WPC existing. He's creating another one, and that's meant just for access by these IT admin folks who have privileged access, right? So we are going to have some global configurations, which makes this WPC a bit more secure than, let's say, the other one, which is for remote access by all employees. So in this one, Sean is going to set up and mandate that all the devices that connect to this WPC are authorized using dive settings. Then he's going to require that all of these authentications have MFA, and then he's going to show you how you can easily switch between this new WPC and the other existing one. Sean, do you have anything else to add?
No, actually, thank you. I was kind of distracted. Actually, Jeremy asked a question, a good question, and I'd like to answer that online because it might be a good question for everybody else, or the answers. So do you want to answer that, or you want me to go for that? It's about the DNS.
I can answer it. So for application routing, do client computers have to reference WPC DNS service for translation to occur? That's absolutely correct, because the DNS server of the WPC acts like a proxy DNS server, and it will then query the upstream server, which can be either your private DNS server. So if you go to the settings DNS, you can set your own DNS servers. So that's fine. It doesn't mean that you need to, it doesn't mean that you are not allowed to use your own DNS servers and that all the DNS records need to be configured in CloudConnexa admin portal. That is not the case. So you can use your own private DNS servers, but the client needs to use the WPC's DNS service. As soon as a connection is set up, automatically the DNS servers are updated with the ones that the WPC is using. So if you just use a OpenVPN client, you will see that your DNS servers for the TUN interface will automatically change to use the WPC DNS servers. Now, if you are in a situation in which you have client computers behind a router that is connecting to the WPC, right? So the router connects to the WPC, not the computers behind the router. Then you have to set that router to use DHCP and push the DNS server IP addresses to the devices behind the router. The good thing about the WPC connections and the tunnel IP address is that it does not change. So anytime you connect to the WPC, even if you change regions, the tunnel IP address assigned to that device does not change. And the DNS server IP address is always the IP address prior, so 1 minus the tunnel IP address that has been assigned. So that's how, if you're using a router, even from the admin portal, you can see what is the tunnel IP address of your connector, and then you just subtract it by 1, and that's the DNS server IP address, and that's what you can push using DHCP to all the clients, all the computers that are not using OpenVPN client, but are just connected to the network.
Okay.
All
Great.
right. So
Thank
looks
you.
like Jeremy is happy
Yeah,
with the
good.
answer.
Thank you. I thought it was a good question, and I'm sure that everybody else could benefit from that answer. Okay, let's go ahead and start with the demo. Like Rohit explained, we're going to create another WPC and then be enable Dive and MFA, and then we'll look at the couple other things here. Okay, here we go. We're on admin UI. The first thing we're going to do is just create a new WPC under the same account. So if I click on this drop down here, you can see the number of WPC I have. And then if I click on add cloud ID, I can create a new one. The first screen you're going to see is going to be the new subscription. You can choose how many connections you need, and then you choose if you want to be billed monthly or annually. So you can change the number here to whatever you need. And then once you're happy with the billing cycle, click on proceed to payment. For the purpose of this video, I'm just use the 3 free connection and click on create. So once you get to the next page, it's going to be the subscription information. You can see the billing time, date, and so on. And then where it says enter cloud ID, this is where we can create a new cloud ID or WPC name. Going to call it OVN Lab 07-2023, for example, and then click on Add Cloud ID. It's going to take a minute or a few seconds actually to create the new WPC, and as you can see, it's done. You can see the address here, and then I can click on Go to the admin portal, so it gets me to the admin user interface for the new WPC or Cloud ID that we just created. The first thing we're going to do, we're going to set up our device identity verification and enforcement. So expand settings and go to users. You can see Dive or device identity verification and enforcement is set to off. So we're going to click on edit and scroll down, and we're going to choose enforce. This is basically, it tells that you as an administrator have to associate a user profile with the device identity or UUID, and only users can connect from those devices. So you need to provision that device in the user profile. And we're going to see that in a second. And the second thing I want to mention here, we want to make sure that we have the minimum requirement for the app clients. Click on confirm, and here we go. Our Dive is enforce. So, and the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to enable two-factor authentication here. So click on user authentication, and we're going to enable two-factor authentication. Now, we do have another option that we can allow trusted devices for the users to opt in to have a trusted device for 30 days. That two-factor authentication will not be enforced. You can enable it, but for the purpose of this video, I'm just leave it off for now. And then click on update, and then we're going to confirm. So the two-factor authentication is enabled on this WPC as well. The second thing, or let's go ahead and create a user. This is a new WPC. We don't have any users or groups, so we want to see how everything works. So first, let me create a group. I'm going to call this group tech support. then everything else is good. Actually, let me put a space here and then add group. So I created the group here. Let's go create a user, and we're going to see how to provision the device as well. So I'm going to add user. Let's call the username John, and then he's going to be part of the tech support, and role is member is fine, and we're going to click on add user. Now the next thing, we need to provision a device because we set up device identity verification and enforcement. So you go to the user properties and click on the plus sign next to the device to provision a device. Let me name it John_device. Again, to distinguish it now, we need the client UUID. There are two ways we can get the UUID from a Windows machine, for example, here. One, if you have the Connect app installed. So let me bring up the Connect app. You can click on the menu, go to settings, and you're going to see the device ID here. So you can copy it and add it there. Another way to do it on the Windows machine is using command prompt and type this command in the command prompt. And it's going to give you the same UUID basically, as you can see. So you need to copy this number and paste it in the UUID field of user profile or device profile. And then we're going to click on add, and here we go. So from now on, John can only access CloudConnexa from this device. Now, as you can see, we don't have any network settings. We don't have any connectors in this WPC, but a user, if he needs to connect to WPC, they can. For example, as you can see, John, we're going to connect to just see it. I'm going to copy the address here. Let me bring up the Connect app, and we're going to create a new profile here. Let me type this, get rid of this one, and then click on next. We need to type the username. And then since this account just was created, so we have a temporary password, let me get the temporary password copy here. And then we're going to go back to the Connect app and paste it here. The very first time when we log in is going to ask us to set a password. So we're going to choose a password for John. Let me type that and then confirm it. And then we need to agree to the terms of services. This is, again, the first time when a user logs into the CloudConnexa, change password. Now, since we enabled the two-factor authentication, we are getting this QR code that John needs to scan it with his Authenticator app. Let me do this here and then click on next and enter the code in here. So from now on, anytime John wants to log in, he needs to use the two-factor authentication. Now, again, the first time when he logs in, he needs to choose the region and everything looks good. Click on connect. Again, John gets connected in a second here. And here we go. It's connected to CloudConnexa. So let me go ahead and disconnect this, and we're going to go back to the admin user interface. So that's that. Let me minimize this and then close this one. Now, switching between the WPCs is pretty simple. Click on the drop down and you can choose, you can see the number of the WPCs that you have, and you can switch back and forth between each one of them. Like as you can see, I'm here on the one of the WPCs. I can do whatever I need to do, and then I can switch back to the other one again. Just click on the drop down and choose the new WPC. So this was our first demo. I'm gonna hand it back to Rohit, and then I'll come back for the second part of the demo.
All right, thank you. So now we saw that Sean has multiple overlay private networks. Now, the question is, do I need to have a connector to be deployed for each private network? And the answer is yes, because each of them is isolated, and the only way it can provide access to applications is if that application is accessible to that WPC, and the only way to make that application accessible to the WPC is by deploying a connector. Now, if you think about it, there could be some applications that are in common between the WPCs, especially if you take this example that Sean had, is that he has created a different WPC for privileged access for those tech support folks that need to access all the application servers. So they are going to need to access the same application servers as the other WPC, which is providing remote access to those applications. So you would need to install connectors again for this new WPC that's for the tech support folks. So basically, for the same network which is hosting those application servers, at a minimum, because of those two WPCs, you would need one connector to connect that network to the remote access WPC, and then you would need another connector to connect that network to the tech support WPC. Now, is there a better way to do this without needing connectors to be deployed for each WPC? So if there are common applications between those WPCs, can we do something more efficient? And we do now indeed have such a capability. We call it App Hub and application sharing. Right now, App Hub is in beta, but it's available for use. It's not a closed beta. It's open for everyone to use. And, and we are going to show you how to use application sharing and App Hub. So for example, here's an example. I already provided one given Sean's privileged access WPC, but here's another example and some of the terms that you are going to hear with App Hub. So here, going back to our multi-WPC example, we have a WPC for site-to-site. Obviously, it's going to have connectors in all the networks which have applications servers in them. So then you have another WPC for remote access, and you are going to need remote access to all those sites. So instead of deploying connectors again to all those sites for the remote access WPC, we use application sharing. So the administrator can go to the WPC for site-to-site, and that WPC takes on the role of app provider because it's providing access to the applications. And it will share application with this other WPC, the point-to-site WPC. Then the admin can go to the switch to the point-to-site WPC, and it will see that there are applications it has been invited to, and then it can accept those invitations. And once that is done, as you can see, the users still connect to the point-to-site WPCs. They do not need to connect to the site-to-site WPC. They continue to connect to the point-to-site WPC. But since those applications have been shared by the site-to-site WPC, the remote access users get access to those applications. So now Sean is going to demo that by completing the example. So we saw Sean just creating the WPC for tech support. There were no connectors there. So he's going to go back to the original WPC and create applications that have access to SSH, the applications that the tech support folks need access to, and then share those applications with the tech support WPC, and then finally show you that the tech support person still connects to the tech support WPC, but now has access to the shared application.
Okay, thanks, Rohit. Let me switch the screen. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and define an application here, expand networks application and add application. We're going to create an app for our name DevOps. So the network is going to be headquarter, and let me put the domain here, vnlab.local. And then for protocols or ports, we're going to use SSH for this one. So I'm going to choose custom and I'm going to choose SSH, click on submit, and then add application. So as you can see, here it is, not that one, DevOps down here. Here we go. DevOps is added to our applications. Now the next step is adding a DNS record. So we need to go expand settings down here and then click on DNS, and then DNS record, we're going to add the DNS. So let me put the domain here. It is DevOps. There we go. Oops. The IP address, and then I'm going to add the DNS record. So we added our DNS record, and we do have the application set and defined here under our applications. The next step is let's go and share this with our new WPC we just created. So I'm going to click on App Hub and click on the second tab where it says App Provider, since we are App Provider, and then scroll down to DevOps, expand DevOps, and you can see an option to share the apps. Click on that. Here you can put the name of the WPC or the company that you're sharing with. I'm just going to use the WPC name here, OVN Lab 07-2023. Again, it can be the name of the company, the groups, the departments, whatever that you're sharing with. And then the next step is going to be entering the cloud ID or WPC name or the email address. I'm going to use the WPC here. Since it's in the same company. And then, yep, that's right. For the internal notes, you can add any notes you would like to add. This is internal for you to see. And then shared as, this is going to be visible to the other side, so you can rename it or add anything you want. Also, the description. So I'm just going to add a DevOps shared, for example, or SSH, and then click on update. Now, if you want to get a copy of the invitation email, you can check that box, otherwise leave it blank, and then click on next. The next screen is the confirmation page. So you confirm everything and then click on confirm and send. So as you can see, invitation was sent. Now if you expand DevOps here, you're going to see you have multiple options here. Copy invitation link for that WPC. You can send a reminder or revoke the share. You can see other information down here as well. So let's switch to new WPC and see the other side's experience. So the application was shared with them. The first time when they click on the app hop, they need to accept the terms of services. Now, as you can see, DevOps is sitting on there waiting for approval, and the domain name is here, the protocol that can be used, and every other information that they need, it's going to be here. Once they're ready to accept, they need to scroll down and click on accept the invitation. Now, since this is the very first time they accepting an invitation, they need to complete their profile. You're going to see the profiles in a few minutes when I do the third part of the demo, but they need to enter the information such as the company name. Here, I'm just going to use the WPC name, and then the sales email, the support email, and so on. Just keep in mind that these email addresses will be shared with other groups or other companies that you're going to share applications with. So once you're done with the entering the, oops, let me change this email. And once you're done entering information, then you click these two boxes that you agree to these two terms, and then click on Save Profile. Again, this is the very first time when you access the App Hub, you're trying to share or you're trying to accept a share application. Again, once you're done with the profile, click on Accept and then confirm that you're accepting. And now the application is moved to approved apps. And as you can see, it's active. Now we're going to create an access policy or access group for DevOps. This is a new WPC, so full mesh is in play. I'm going to create a new access group. Let's call it DevOps. Group, we have only one group, tech support. I'm going to choose that. And since there's an application being shared with us under destination, we can see a new section that says application shared with you. And this is where we can choose, again, DevOps, the application that's being shared. So basically, we're saying that tech support is the only group has access to DevOps from this WPC. Now, we need to get rid of the full mesh access group. So let's go to settings, WPC, and we're going to change our topology from full mesh to custom, and then update and confirm. Now, as a reminder, the custom topology needs to be selected in order for the access groups come into play. Otherwise, full mesh is just going to be in place. So now I'm going to delete this full mesh access policy, and then we have DevOps. So everybody who's in part of tech support can access DevOps shared app. John is the only user we have here. If you remember, I created it earlier, so I'm going to connect with John. And let's go ahead and SSH to DevOps and see if John can access that server. So let me bring up my command prompt, and I'm going to type the command. Let me type this. And it's going to ask for the password. Here we go. I'm going to type the password here and hit enter. Oops, I think I made a mistake. Let me retype the password. And here we go. And here we go. As you can see now, we're SSHing to that server as John. So I can run any commands that I need to on that server. So for example, let's just do an IP config to see the IP address. As you can see, the IP address of the server is shown here. That's the one that we used for the DNS record. So this is how we can share an app between two WPCs under the same account and create an access group for that share app. So this was the end of the second demo. I'm going to pass it back to Rohit again and then come back for the third part of the demo.
All right, thanks, Sean. So Sean just showed us how to share applications within WPCs of your own company, but you can essentially do the same when the app client is external. So you can invite other companies or other partners outside your company to share private applications that you have. So Sean showed that he put in the cloud ID, the WPC ID directly while sharing applications, but you can share the application by inviting any email address. So an email invitation goes to that email address, just similar to, the experience when you share files from Google Drive or something like that. And if that app client is not a user of CloudConnexa, that email automatically has a link which will help them sign up for a CloudConnexa account. And like Sean said earlier, when he explained the profiles, that's the reason we need the profile information while sharing or while accepting so that both parties know who is sharing the application with them and who has accepted the application share from them. So that's kind of to verify the identity of each party. Now, there are multiple examples why you would want to share applications externally. Some of them here is, if you're undergoing an M&A and, you have two completely different networks, two different group of employees, and they are coming together under one company. So you can provide them quick access to your company's private applications. It could be just your corporate directory, your intranet website, things of that nature. Basically setting up an extranet you can think of very quickly by sharing applications using AppHub. Another use case could be to external contractors or to financial auditors or any of your suppliers or vendors, etc. So here's an example of, just illustrating the point. Here you see that there are two WPCs, each belonging to a separate owner. So here a manufacturer, Owen, is sharing his inventory application with a retailer of the manufactured goods, which is, shop.com. So he's sharing that application with IT at shop.com. And then the store associates can just connect to the WPC for that vendor shop and get access to the inventory from the manufacturer to place orders and to check inventory counts. All right. So in this last demo, Sean is going to show an example of how he provides access to a private database. I think it's a CRM app that he has created to an outside company so that the outside company can get access to it. Okay.
Yes, so let me go ahead and switch. Once on Admin UI, then you click on App Hub in the menu bar on the left side. The very first time when you access it, there is a term of services that you need to accept. Check that box and then click on Continue to App Hub. Then you'll be presented with this page, which is App Client. So if you have any application waiting for your approval, you're going to see it here. If you have any approved apps that is being shared with you, you're going to see it in this section. Well, we're going to go to App Provider because we want to share our app with somebody else. The very first time when you try to share an app, you need to create a profile. The reason you need to fill the profile is that the other party accepting the shared service knows the identity of the provider and know who you are. Also, they have the contact information to reach you in case if there is any problem. So I put the name of the company here, sales email, and the support email. Then you need to check those two checkboxes. Basically, you are saying that you accept and acknowledge that the verified owner email will be shared again for the identity verification reason with the company or the person that you're going to share the application with. So when you're happy with everything, then you're going to click on Save Profile. I think Dan likes a name. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add a number at the end of it to just for the purpose of this video, and then I'm going to save the profile. So here we go. The profile is saved. Now we can go ahead and share the application. I'm going to switch profile. I'm going to go to another WPC that I have some applications already defined. So this is another WPC that we have here. And if I expand networks and go to applications, you can see I've already have some application setups. CRM is the application that we're using in this company, and we need to share it with an auditing company to get audited. This is for our annual audits, basically. So this is the application that we're going to go ahead and share. So in order to share this, click on App Hub again, and this time we're going to go to App Provider tab. We already created the profile here, so we should be good. Expand CRM, this is the application that we want to share, and you're going to see an option to share the app. I'm going to click on that button to start the sharing. Now, the first field that you're going to see is the app client name. This is the name of the company that you're sharing with. For example, here it's going to be auditors. Now, the next section is going to be the cloud ID or app client email address. I know the cloud ID, so I'm using the cloud ID here, but if you don't know, just type the email address. Internal notes, if you want to add anything, you can do that. Shared as, this is visible to client. You can edit this any way you want it, also for the description. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to go ahead, click on edit, and shared as, I'm just going to call it OVN Lab CRM, to just put the name of the company in front of it. And the description, I put this is shared CRM for annual audits, for example. And then click on update. Now, if you want to get a copy of the invitation, you check this box. If not, uncheck it, click on next. Then you're going to be presented with confirmation detail. You want to make sure everything is good. If you're happy with everything, then click on confirm and send. And as you can see, invitation successfully sent. Now, if I expand CRM again, this time we'll see that the invitation is sent. And if I want to invite somebody else or share it with another company, I can just click on invite new and go through these steps. Acceptance is pending right now for the company that I'm sharing with. Now, I do have some options here. Copy invitation link. I can copy the invitation link and send it to them. I do have a send reminder option if I want to do that. And also I can revoke this sharing app if I decide to do that. You can see other information here. For example, the company that I shared it with, it shows on their app client name and then the email addresses that I used. So let's go ahead and go to the client's WPC. So we are on our auditor's WPC. As you can see, let's check their email. So they have received the email. It says you've been invited, and it says that they're receiving this email because OVN Lab wants to use CloudConnexa App Hub to provide an external access to their CRM or application. Now, there are steps that they need to follow. Log into CloudConnexa and navigate to App Hub and do this. So if they don't have an account, click on log into CloudConnexa. They can create an account for themselves and sign up with the service. If they do already have an account, they can just click on login and log into the portal. As you can see, I'm logged in. So click on App Hub. And now you can see under the app client, I have an app waiting for my approval, which is OVN Lab CRM, and it came from OVN Lab. Now, if you look at the on the right side, there are some details here. For example, the address or domain name, and also under shared by, those are the information that we entered when we created the profile. Again, pending approval. And if everything is okay, I want to accept it. I go ahead and click on accept and confirm that. So now it's moved to under the app approved apps, and on the right side you can see it's active. Now if I want to remove it, I can just click on this box and remove the app from my WPC. Let's go to users. Users, click on it. You see I have 3 users already set up. Emma is one of our users, part of sales team. Let's go ahead and connect with Emma's account to WPC. Emma is going to use the app client to connect to WPC. Here we go. We are connected. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to try to access the CRM app that's being shared with Emma and her company. So I'm just going to type the address here and hit enter, and here we go. So Emma has access to CRM as it was expected because it was shared. That was the end of our demo. I'm going to return it back to Rohit for the recap and answering any questions you may have. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Sean. So just to recap, we looked at multiple WPCs. We saw some of the use cases where it makes sense, like isolating applications and access from various departments, managing departmental budgets better, creating different WPCs because you need different global settings or configurations to use. And lastly, segmenting your network makes it easier to manage various settings and access controls. Then we saw that if you have multiple WPCs in play, instead of deploying connectors, you can easily share applications between your WPCs using AppHub. And finally, we saw how you can use AppHub to share your private application externally. So I think we are about 1 minute over. There's a question here. I was typing an answer to question. What I think I can sum it up as a question about what's the difference between Access Server and CloudConnexa and Access Server and CloudConnexa connector. So let me spend 2 minutes on that. For folks that don't know, we have another solution, private networking solution, which is called Access Server. So Access Server is our self-hosted VPN solution. So basically, you deploy a VPN server on the network that you need access to, and then all your users connect to that access server on that specific network in order to access those applications on the network. Whereas with CloudConnexa, it is a cloud delivered service, and you don't need to install any VPN servers on your networks. Your networks don't need to accept incoming VPN sessions. CloudConnexa, as Sean said, you can think of it as a distributed router, and it makes all the routing happen between its 30 plus worldwide regions. So the regions host the servers, and if you run a client called a connector on the network that your applications are hosted in. It could be your AWS VPC, it could be an on-prem network, it could be, anything, or it can even be just an application server. Once you run this connector, it's basically an OpenVPN client. It creates an outbound connection. So you can essentially use firewalls and say, don't allow any incoming connections to my network, because the connector makes an outbound connection to one of the regions. As soon as that connection is made, your WPC now has access to any of the applications you define in that network. Then your users or other devices, other sites can connect to any of the 30 worldwide regions. And when they try to access the application, the service will route it properly to the destination. So it's a different model. There is encrypted tunnels between the connector and the CloudConnexa region. And then there are encrypted tunnels which form the core mesh network between the various regions. So that's the core network. So your packet goes from the user's device to that OpenVPN tunnel from the user's device to one of the CloudConnexa regions, right, through encrypted through the OpenVPN tunnel, which is set up on demand. Then from, let's say this is your connector is in New York and your user is in LA. So the tunnel is set up from your user's device to the LA region. The packet goes through that tunnel. It comes to the LA region's server in that data centers of ours. Like Sean said, everything is mesh connected. So there is another big tunnel between the LA region to New York region. So again, that packet travels encrypted along with all the other packets that that region is serving to the New York region. Then it goes encrypted from the New York region inside the tunnel to that inside the always on tunnel to that connector, and finally to its destination. So so there are so for each connection there are one or two regions, CloudConnexa regions involved. Whereas if you use the self-hosted access server, it's a VPN server, so you just connect to that VPN server. So there's just one server in there. Each solution has its advantages and disadvantages, but hopefully that answers the question here. Regarding App Hub, it's layer 4, not layer 7. You can't specify the app by its name, only by its port. No, it is layer 7. So you can have any port. You cannot address the app by its IP address. You have to use domain routing. So the app needs to have a domain name. So like when Sean SSH'd into it, he said SSH John at the domain name of that, whatever it was, devops.local. something. So, yep, it's layer 7. All right. I think that's all we have the time for today. And Amar, if you have any further questions, you can ask support and they'll get back to you. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Have a good day.